In 1989, the U.S. Air Force unveiled the F-117 Nighthawk to the public. For nearly a decade, they had denied its existence. Pilots who flew it couldn't tell their families. Engineers who built it signed secrecy agreements that could land them in prison. And when rumors leaked, the Pentagon dismissed them as conspiracy theories. But the F-117 was real. It had been operational since 1983. It had flown combat missions. And the only reason the world found out was because the Air Force decided it was time. So when people started talking about another aircraft, one that allegedly flew at the edge of space at speeds beyond anything ever built, the government's response was predictable. They called it fantasy. They said the physics didn't work. They insisted no such plane existed. Except the evidence kept piling up. Sonic booms over the California desert. Contractors with unexplained budgets. Radar operators tracking something that moved faster than anything in the skies. And a name that kept appearing in classified documents and whispered conversations among aerospace engineers. Aurora. The story begins in 1985, buried in a Pentagon budget document. A line item under classified aircraft expenditures. The word Aurora appeared next to a funding request for $2.3 billion. It was listed under procurement, not research, which meant whatever Aurora was, it wasn't theoretical. They were building it. Aviation journalists picked up on it immediately. But when they asked the Air Force, officials said Aurora was simply a code name for the entire stealth aircraft budget. Nothing more. The funding was for existing programs, including the B-2 bomber. Move along. But the details didn't add up. The B-2 had its own budget line. So did the F-117. If Aurora was just an umbrella term, why the separate allocation? Why the secrecy even within classified channels? Then came the sightings. In the late 80s and early 90s, residents near Edwards Air Force Base and Groom Lake, better known as Area 51, began reporting strange aircraft in the night sky. Long, slender shapes. No visible exhaust. And a sound unlike any jet engine they'd ever heard. Some described it as a pulsing roar. Others said it sounded like the sky was tearing apart. In 1992, a seismologist in Southern California recorded unusual seismic events. They weren't earthquakes. The patterns were too regular, too rhythmic. He published a paper suggesting they were sonic booms from an aircraft traveling at hypersonic speeds. The intervals between the booms indicated something moving at Mach 5 or higher. For reference, the State Route 71 Blackbird, the fastest acknowledged plane in history, topped out at Mach 3.3. Whatever this was, it was significantly faster. Around the same time, multiple witnesses in the North Sea reported seeing a triangular aircraft flying at extreme altitude, followed by a distinctive contrail pattern. Unlike normal contrails, which form a continuous line, this one looked segmented, like evenly spaced dashes across the sky. Aerospace experts later said this pattern was consistent with pulse detonation engines, a type of propulsion that creates thrust through rapid, controlled explosions. This technology was experimental in the 90s. Officially, no operational aircraft used it. But here's where it gets interesting. In 1990, aviation expert Bill Sweetman published a detailed analysis in Jane's Defense Weekly, one of the most respected military publications in the world. He didn't just speculate. He compiled radar data, budget documents, eyewitness accounts, and engineering analysis. His conclusion: the US was operating a Mach 5 plus reconnaissance aircraft, likely hydrogen-fueled, possibly using some form of combined cycle engine that could transition from jet propulsion to scramjet mode at high altitude. The Air Force response? Silence. They didn't confirm. They didn't deny. They simply ignored the report. Meanwhile, something else was happening. The State Route 71, the plane Aurora was allegedly meant to replace, was being retired. In 1990, the Air Force announced the Blackbird program was ending. Too expensive, they said. Satellites could do the job better. But pilots and intelligence analysts were baffled. Satellites follow predictable orbits. They can't respond to emerging threats. They can't reposition quickly. A reconnaissance plane, on the other hand, could be anywhere in hours. Why would you retire your fastest, most capable aircraft unless you had something better? The official replacement was the U-2, a plane first flown in 1955. It made no sense. Unless, of course, there was an aircraft they weren't talking about. In Part 2, we'll look at the engineers who broke their silence and the incredible technology that might power this secret aircraft. We explore the mysterious sightings and the retirement of the State Route 71. Now, we look at the insiders who spoke out and the technology that might make Aurora real. Then in 1994, a former Lockheed engineer gave an interview to a British aviation magazine. He described a hypersonic reconnaissance platform his team had worked on in the mid-80s. He said it used liquid methane fuel, could reach altitudes above 100,000 feet, and had a range that allowed it to fly from the continental US to anywhere in the world and back without refueling. He wouldn't provide specifics, but he confirmed the program existed and that at least 2 prototypes had been built. Lockheed Martin, his former employer, threatened legal action. The magazine pulled the article from future editions, but copies had already circulated, and the engineers' claims lined up too well with everything else. So why build something like Aurora? The answer is reconnaissance and speed. During the Cold War, intelligence was everything. Knowing where enemy forces were positioned, what weapons they were developing, whether they were preparing for an attack. This information could mean the difference between peace and nuclear war. Spy satellites helped, but they had limitations. A hypersonic plane could fill the gaps. It could fly over denied territory before air defenses even realized it was there. It could photograph installations, intercept communications, gather signals intelligence. And it could do all of this faster than any missile could reach it. But building such a plane required solving enormous engineering challenges. At hypersonic speeds, air friction generates heat that can melt titanium. The State Route 71 dealt with this by using special fuel that also acted as a coolant and by building the airframe to expand as it heated. But at Mach 5 or higher, those solutions aren't enough. You need exotic materials, active cooling systems, engines that can operate efficiently across a massive speed range. One theory is that Aurora uses a propulsion system called a turbine-based combined cycle engine. At lower speeds, it operates like a normal jet. As speed increases, it transitions to ramjet mode, where air compression alone ignites the fuel. At the highest speeds, it becomes a scramjet, burning fuel in supersonic airflow. This kind of engine was theoretical in the 80s. Today, it's still experimental. But if anyone could build it, it would be Lockheed Skunk Works, the same secretive division that created the U-2, the State Route 71, and the F-117. There's another clue buried in budget documents. Throughout the 90s and 2000s, the Air Force maintained a black budget for classified programs that exceeded $50 billion annually. Only a fraction of that can be accounted for through known projects. Billions are unaccounted for. Some of that funding likely went to drone development, satellite systems, and cyber warfare. But aviation analysts believe a significant portion supported advanced aircraft programs that have never been publicly acknowledged. By the mid-2000s, sightings tapered off. Either the aircraft was no longer flying, or it had been moved to locations even more remote than Area 51. Some speculate it was replaced by hypersonic drones or satellite technology that finally caught up. Others believe it's still operational, flying missions so classified that even leaks are impossible. But here's the thing. Whether Aurora exists or not, the technology certainly does. In recent years, the US has openly discussed hypersonic flight. DARPA has tested hypersonic glide vehicles. Lockheed has unveiled concept designs for the State Route 72, a Mach 6 successor to the Blackbird. And in 2020, officials confirmed that a classified space plane, the X-37B, has been conducting missions in orbit for years, sometimes staying up for over 2 years at a time. If the government is willing to acknowledge those programs now, what does that say about what they're hiding today? The truth is, Aurora might be an outdated code name for a plane that flew 30 years ago. Or it might still be out there, slicing through the stratosphere at speeds we can't even track. Either way, it represents something bigger. A reminder that the most advanced technology isn't unveiled at air shows or press conferences. It's flying in the dark, over places you'll never see, doing things the public won't know about for decades. The jet the US swears doesn't exist might be real, or it might be a myth, but the fact that we still don't know for sure, that's exactly how they want it.